Hi everyone, Dom Famularo here. I am back. My gosh, I keep coming back every week like a bad rash. Holy mackerel, this is incredible. Thanks so much for joining me, and thanks so much for being a part of the Mapex family. We have an incredible time here by interviewing so many great artists from all around the world, and this whole global concept of what offers that this platform has on the Mapex All Access channel here is that all of these interviews really are storing information about all of these great players. There are players that I want everyone to get to know of because their playing and their history and their dedication and their passion is such an important part of the drumming family globally, including all drummers around the world. But then specifically in the Mapex family, we've got some great dedicated artists that are really doing some phenomenal stuff, and that's really what this is about. So I thank you all for joining me, and any questions you have, by all means, put the questions up. If you can, if you sign on, let us know where you're from, what part of the world you are, what city you are, so that when that pops up in the feed, we can see that too. But without any further ado, I'd like to bring on a dear friend and a phenomenal player. Would you please welcome Mr. Mylious Johnson?
What's up, Dom?
Mylious, thanks so much for joining me. This is really fantastic to have you.
Thank you. Always good to talk with you, Dom. You know that.
Now, let's fill everybody in. You're coming to me from Italy. Just describe that you're in Italy, and what part of Italy are you in?
I am in the south of Italy, known as Puglia. I live in the region of Salento. It's the very heel. It's the tip of the heel, the very last part. In fact, I was a few miles from a beach where there's a sign that says, "This is the end." There's a sign right there. This is the end.
Well, I'm very familiar with Italy and going down there many times, and I've got family and relatives that came from Calabria, Reggio Calabria, on the tip
next door.
And where you are in that area, the Puglia area, first of all, the food, the wine, the beaches, it is just such a beautiful area.
Dom, I came here and got stuck. I couldn't leave.
Well, you know, it's funny you mention that because I am currently working on getting my Italian citizenship. I'm able to get it through my mother's father. You know, when he came to America, he gave birth to my mother before he became a citizen. So my mother, in actuality, was born as an Italian citizen in America. So she was an American citizen. So because of that, now I'm able to have access, and myself and my children can make that happen. So I'm in the process of doing that now to get that. It's taken some more time because of COVID, for sure.
No, in fact, I've been waiting for some documents as well. The lines are super long. COVID slowed everything down, but slowly but surely it seems to be stabilizing. So we'll see.
Well, be prepared at some point. If I want to buy a little place in the southern part of Italy, I'm just going to be stopping.
I got some vino and pasta for you, man.
Now, I want to go back to the beginning, Mylious. We had the chance of touring together and playing together, and we've done some things. My gosh, do you remember the date that we did with Billy Cobham in Germany? At the Music Messe, and we each played individually, then we played together with this great funk band that was playing.
That was playing behind us. That was amazing. Actually, I have to be very honest, and I don't think we've ever talked about this after that too much, but I was so nervous. You know, I grew up all my life watching Billy Cobham and imitating him and setting my kid up like him. And then one day I get this call like, "Hey, we're going to go play with Billy Cobham." Who? Me? Me? Okay. Literally, I was shaking, man. It was incredible.
How great was that? Well, Billy has been a dear friend of mine for now just about 50 years. I've known Billy. I mean, going back to 1971 when I first met Billy. A dear friend, and I'm actually doing some projects with him now, and we're doing a masterclass together, and one in September, October, November. But we talk about that event, and Billy was just he on the sideline. He and I were watching you play, and at one point, Billy hit me on the shoulder and said, "This guy Mylious is really good." I said, "No kidding, man. Are you kidding?" He's like he's the next generation of what's going on there. So it was just so great.
Man, it was incredible. And he gave me such great advice. And I mean, honestly, I wish that more drummers could have a chance to get that information, because the information he gave me wasn't just about playing. It wasn't a lot of playing information. It's a lot of life information that would help me in playing. You know, it was a really great experience. And thank you for that.
That was great, great fun. And it was a sold out event. It was 2 stages. We were on
Two stages. It was incredible, man. That was great.
We played chicken together with the whole band and the whole. My God,
But you, Billy, I did something. Of course, I was probably overplaying. You know, young man was doing this thing, and then you came, and then Billy just came and said, "Shh, I said, okay.
He just lays it down so smart the way
You came right behind him. It was just dynamically incredible, and that was a lesson in itself. Yeah, that was a lesson that day for me as well.
And that day, believe it or not, was the day for me that I remember. Not only was just the great fun we had playing together, but that was also the day I stood in front of. They had 2 big 6-foot columns of monitors behind each of us.
Oh yeah.
And that was the day after the show when I went to the dressing room and I said to Billy, Billy, what's that loud ring going on in our dressing room? And Billy said, welcome. You now have tinnitus. Your ears have tinnitus for the rest of your life. And that my ears have been ringing for the rest of my life from that show.
Wow, you know, I've listened. That's one bit of information I got from the guys before me. They said protect your ears.
Yeah. And what's funny, man, I always wear ear protection, and I had them on my snare drum, so when I walk up, I could just plug them in. And lesson learned, I got to my snare drum, they weren't there. Someone took them off, so when I got there, I looked for them, I couldn't find them, and of course the audience was applauding, so there was no time to stop and try and look for them. So I just went for it. And
on with the show.
Lesson learned: carry your earpieces in your pocket so you have them with you at all times. Exactly right. Now let's go back to the start, Mylious. I mean, I am such a fan of your playing, and you really kind of like had that gospel playing style down before even the term gospel drumming was even there. So you kind of helped kind of put this all together. So let's go back to the early days, you know, where you grew up and what got you involved with music.
Well, from the Bronx, New York, born and raised, and I'm a church boy. My dad was a pastor, community organizer. I grew up in church playing gospel drums. I was lucky, though, to be born in New York, which is a great advantage. You don't realize the advantage of being born in that city until you get older and start to travel, but everything was outside my door. So even though I was playing gospel music heavy at church 3-4 times a week practicing, I was also listening to everything that was going on in the city outside my door. There were some great musicians who also lived in my neighborhood, in my general area. Will Calhoun being one, of course, and some of the guys who live in color, and Steve Jordan was just up the way. So I had the chance to see them around the area, talk with them, and yeah, it started there. It all started from gospel, and then from gospel, you start to pick up other things, start to realize that R&B, blues, jazz, funk, all of this music is not so far away. It's more about what's being written and being spoken in front of it. Yeah. The base of the music, I started to understand, is exactly the same. And yeah, before, gospel chops and all this stuff, we were all going to each other's churches and kind of emulating, everyone who was, if I had this conversation with Dave Berkeley last summer here, in fact, I was telling him how much he influenced us. He said, oh, no one ever says it. I was like, we do, it's just no one really writes it down. No one, but we all had master plan. We all learned how to tune drums from watching your video. We were taking what we were listening from Vinny, from you, from Billy, from everyone, and putting it in our context of gospel music. Yeah. And that's kind of how that sound started to happen, that mix of, it's just a fusion of everything. And us really just watching and watching what was happening in front of us and making it ours, I would say, like put it in church.
What amazes me is in those days, I mean, you kind of incorporated R&B, some pop, some funk, some jazz, even a little bit of Latin influence got kind of in there. And then you put on top of that some incredible facility and technique and this mixing pot of such great ability and talent really is what you've done, which is absolutely fantastic.
I honestly, I can't even take complete credit for that. It's like there were a lot of guys that I think people didn't hear about before me that were playing in New York in church at that time who were really doing it. for instance, we all know Gerald Hayward, excuse me. Yeah. And he was one of the guys who was playing with a large gospel group and then got out to start to play some R&B and pop music. And that was a great learning point for us. Then there were other guys like Danny Ford from Mount Vernon, New York. And these guys, and I mean, there's a lot. It's just too many that never cross the, how you say, the information highway where they're not well known. But I took a lot. In fact, Darius Woodley's father.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I grew up watching his father in church. That's an interesting story. And he's a young guy on the roster right now, but I grew up watching his dad. Imagine that.
And yeah. His dad was playing at that time in the church.
Oh yeah, his dad was one of the best sitting on drums, man, in New York years ago. Yeah, he just he was doing more gospel. He did some R&B stuff, but you know, some things just don't work out that way. But that guy, when I was growing up, had the best pocket. Man, he just sat dynamics. He knew how to play. He could play, man. You know what I mean? It's like the sound. You learn about sound, you know.
So how old are you when you got your first drum set and then started playing?
3. I was about 3 years old. After my grandmother got tired of me breaking wooden spoons on the pots and pans, she took me to get a drum set. And there's a little, you know, 2-piece, 3-piece drum set. And then after I started to listen to records and break that up, my dad took me down to Sam Ash. You know, I was about 8 or 9. You know, I always had drums at church. So I never really had much in the house because I was at church all week. So we had drums at church. I had something small at home. And then when I got about 9 or 10, I started to get really serious about practicing and taking lessons and, you know, and my dad took me to Manny's Music on 48th Street.
In the heart of New York City, absolutely.
Yeah, and here's a crazy story, right? So he took me to Manny's Music. I looked inside Manny's. It was cool, but then next door was Sam Ash, and Marco was in there with the big hair and that super big D drum kit. I said, Dad,
Marco Saccoli, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's how I met Marco. I said, Dad, we gotta go in here.
Marco Saccoli, for those that don't know, first of all, he's a phenomenal drummer.
Yep.
And he's just an absolute energy in the drumming industry and the companies that he has worked with in the past. He's brought in so much great talent to all major companies. And he really, yeah, and he's been an incredible energy, and he's someone that really is one of these unsung heroes that just keeps in everyone's face at what he does. Such a brilliant person, and really a great guy.
Great guy, and also Italiano.
Absolutely, exactly right, exactly right.
I got my first kid, and then actually the first kid I got was the Tama Rockstar, and then. Honestly, that got stolen. They broke into the church and stole it.
Wow.
In the Bronx. And then my dad said, you can't be without drums. So a few weeks later, I got a Mapex Orion. That was the first Mapex kit I got.
How
fantastic. 10 years old, yeah, my Mapex Orion. We still have that kit. I still have that kit.
That was a great line of drums that they made, the Orion. I like those. Those are really great.
Yeah, it was a heavy old white Orion, Pro white Orion, yeah.
So you start playing, you're playing in the church band. Were you taking any lessons at all?
Very little. You know, a friend of my dad's years ago was Max Roach. So my first, he was just a friend of my dad. My dad lived in Harlem. He grew up in Harlem. My grandfather was the owner of a few jazz clubs and, you know, smokers around. So he knew most of the musicians in Harlem and coming around in the 50s and 60s. So my dad knew who he was. My dad's not a musician, but in the neighborhood, they knew each other. And he realized I wanted to play. And he called somebody he knew that was good. I remember the first day he rang the bell and he opened the door. I was just like, you just brought me to Max Roach's house. Yeah, I had the records in the house and there he is, you know. And we spent some time together young, but honestly, I was playing so much, I didn't really get any formal lessons until I got to high school. When I got to high school, it got really serious, and then I knew I wanted to go to Berkeley. So I had to do some catching up on the theory side of music. You know, right. Playing wise, I grew up playing by ear. So it's basically, I would hear it and repeat it, hear it, or just practice it till I got it. And then there's an easy workaround. If you could just get the notation, you can just, you can just read it, work around. But I learned the difficult way. So everything by ear and memory. So I had some catching up to do on the theory side when I got to high school. Yeah.
So you literally, you know, trained yourself by developing and fine-tuning the ear, which is really one of the most natural and effective ways to understand this instrument, which is really fantastic. So now, you get into high school. So when you got into high school, you started to take some lessons with the people that you were starting to meet up with.
Yeah, I got into high school, and there were some teachers at. I went to LaGuardia for a couple of years, music and art. And while I was in New York, I was down at Drummers Collective while Smitty was there. So I took some one-on-one with Smitty. Sometimes Vinny would come through. I took some one-on-one with Vinny
Just so
Cagayuda.
everyone knows, Marvin Smitty
Smitty
Smith,
Smith. Sorry, excuse me.
Vinny Cagayuda. These are names that are legends in the industry as far as great players. So you had a chance to really kind of rub elbows with some serious players.
Yeah, because they were coming through the collective. They were all in New York playing at the club. So sometimes my dad would take me down, or I'd meet some guys, ask them if they'd be in town. They said, yeah, come through the collective. We get a room. I'm there for a few days. And it just, I'm in town. Yes, we can book a lesson, things like that. I didn't really have my own personal one teacher the whole time. I had many teachers and information. Not until I got to Berkeley did I have one teacher for a few years.
So what made it? So Berkeley was on your wish list to get there, and you got there.
Yeah, it was on my wish list to get there. I participated. So I went to LaGuardia for 2 years, and then my mom became the commissioner of childhood education in the city of Hartford. So we moved up to Hartford, Connecticut for like my last year of high school, and I went to Greater Hartford Academy of the Performing Arts in Hartford. And from there, I got to Berkeley. We participated in the high school jazz festival. And I actually won a scholarship.
Well, this is so great, Modest. First of all, I want everyone to know that LaGuardia School is really a school of high-end artists that go to that school. There are some amazing musicians of all instruments and all genres that have come out of that school. LaGuardia is really known for worldwide at the top. So then you go from there, and then next thing you get the scholarship at Berkeley. So now, what happened when you went to Berkeley? Who were some of the guys that were there that you met?
So when I got there, the one guy I gravitated to, honestly, was Ron Savage. I had Big Ron. I had Ron Savage.
Nice.
And it was weird because I went in on a percussion scholarship, but halfway through I changed to music business management. And I just kept my private lessons. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was no need. I mean, most of what they were teaching in the percussion part, because I didn't want to go be a professional percussionist in an orchestral sense. You understand?
Yeah.
So I needed what I wanted to go do. I wanted to go and try to play the highest level of pop music possible. And that sounds crazy, and I'll explain myself, but I wanted to go and understand how to take all of these really incredible tools and skills and put them in a pop setting. Because I always felt like pop music got a bad rap, but I started to see the guys who were playing it, I know are amazing musicians. And I started to understand that the discipline that they need to play this type of music is something really, you have to focus.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it gets crazy. And I appreciated that somehow. I started to find Quincy Jones in college. I started to really listen to records. I had great professors with me there that were introducing me to composition. And then I started to understand the value of what notes to play where when you're thinking about a composition. So I didn't really want to sit in the drum room and all day. I wanted to understand how I should practice, what I should be listening to, get better at reading, sight reading. I was with Ron for these things, like to get better at my sight reading and doing the connection between your reading and your creativity, timing of it and how to anticipate. And I started to learn how to read horn charts instead of the drum chart because I just need the hits, not all the other stuff. Yeah. So Berkeley was a learning ground. Besides socially meeting pretty much everybody who's working in the industry now was in and out or around Berkeley, or So Berkeley was definitely an experience on how to be a professional, like what it takes, and getting to watch professionals come to the school.
Yeah,
that were doing it in the moment. Yeah.
But there was, like you said, there was so many different players that came out of it that really were just great. They're out there working now and they're doing it, and they really funneled a really large amount of great players, not only in drums but in guitar and bass and horns and keyboard.
Everything, keys, singers, production. Berkeley in general is just like, if you want to be a musician, you got to go check it out, man. You just got to go be in the environment. Yeah, it's an environment that breeds. Competition is the wrong word. It's a highly competitive school, but it's not competition. It's like steel sharpens steel.
Yeah.
You have to think, my drum class was John Blackwell, Adonis Rose. Little John Roberts had just left, like he was leaving when I was coming. You know, it's like, I was in school with, you know, with some, Mark Simmons. I mean, man, we were shedding and beating each other up on, like it was nuts, dude. Yeah.
Well, and Little John Roberts, my gosh, I love his playing, man. This is a guy
Me
that's
too, man. You know, he was so one of the big ensembles at Berkeley when I was there is the gospel choir. It
yeah.
was one of the few ensembles that traveled. And Dennis Montgomery III, who was the director at that time, incredible musician, teacher, just person. He was looking for a new drummer because Little John was leaving. He was going, I think he was leaving with Lucy Pearl or something like that. He just got that gig, or Janet Jackson maybe. And he was leaving to go, and they need a new drummer. So we all auditioned. So this was the audition. Blackwell, me, Adonis Rose, Mark Simmons. It's my man from Baltimore, great drummer from Baltimore. John Lampkin.
Oh,
And we
John.
all, we all sitting there in line, waiting. And they all looking at me because I'm the only real gospel guy. And I remember John Lampkin said, I'm going to go play, but I'm sure you're about to get it. Yeah. No. It was like, that was Berkeley. That was like the first 3 days. Like, you know.
We don't. Where Berkeley does it, it's a good point you bring up. It's not about competition, but you do get pushed because you start to see a level of playing that is potentially capable of reaching, and you start to see people raise the bar to such a level that it pushes us to raise our own bar to a higher level, and that's something.
There was no summers off. You want to come back the next year to beat somebody down. You know what I'm saying, on drums. You know, like, there was no summers off. I would go home and practice all summer, like just to come back to school. You know, like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Berkeley was that. It was a great experience for me. I really enjoyed my time there. I learned a lot. Yeah, and then that's about all I can say about Berkeley, man. It was just
So after Berkeley, so you know, Berkeley happens. What was the first gig that you had gotten when you came out of Berkeley? Did you go back to Connecticut at that point, or
No, after Berkeley, I went back to Connecticut for a little while. I took a small detour to the Marine Corps, to the military for a few years. I went in special program, and then I came out in the reserves. And then I went to New York. I just went back home. I went back home to New York and started from there, playing in the clubs. I had friends that were in New York playing. Horn player of mine, Mike Phillips, friend of mine, horn player named Mike Phillips. We kind of came up together, and he's always in the scene. You know, he's working with Teddy Riley and these things. And I called him up like, hey, I'm back. I want to play. What's up? He's like, come down. And honestly, from that moment, I would say it was about a year. And then I got a gig with 98 Degrees. That was like the first really, like, there was a lot of stuff in the middle, like one-offs for TV, fly to LA, do Jay Leno, for promotion run with somebody, but nothing really big as a tour until 98 Degrees. That was about 97.
Okay, so before that happened, you get called to go out and do a TV show. So you were starting.
Yeah, little gigs here around, just being around the city, gigging in the city. But New York is wonderful at that time. I mean, you can play 5 times in a week and clear 1,500. You know what I mean? If you're sitting in New York with the right group of guys, you can work a lot just in the city. So at that time, it was a good thing. Recording sessions. I was a part of the union, so sometimes they would call me for recording sessions, and the guys in front of me taught me how to make money in New York to survive as a musician. They kind of showed me the ropes. You have to play here, join the union, make yourself available for sessions. Sometimes you get a theater call. And that's when all that reading came into handy, because every job is not always, you get to use your ear and do your thing. Sometimes you get a chart and got to do it then.
Would a lot of these bands, would they give you charts? Would they give you the music? Would you chart it out yourself? What was the process?
Like, honestly, outside of the theater, or that type of film or studio or film scoring, most of the stuff you get, they call you for your sound and your fingerprint. You know what I mean? And so, most of it is you listen to the music, you learn it, then you get in the room and you arrange it with the artist. I mean, in one part. And the other part, sometimes they just hand you a chart and say, run that down.
Yeah.
You're working with the conductor. There is no improvisation. You're playing what's on the paper because that's the job. You know what I mean? So it just really depends on the situation. Most of what I do though is we learn the music, we meet up in the rehearsal room, we arrange a show, and we out on tour.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, but part of the quality of being able to have the value to be hired to do a wide variety of different types of gigs is you have to learn how to read. You have to understand different styles. You have to understand R&B and gospel and jazz and funk and fusion. You have to open your mind to all that, and that just makes you more valuable to be called for more performances.
More things. It's like I learned that quick. You know, I got a call one time to do a gig, and I wasn't prepared because I wasn't familiar with the style of music and the vocabulary. You know, I like to say it like this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. To me, the drums and what you're doing on it is like language, like the Italian language. Each region here, they all speak in Italian, but they have their own dialect. So sometimes I'll go to another region. My Italian is bad enough, but when they start speaking in dialect, I understand nothing. So, you know, it's that kind of thing. They're still speaking Italian. I understand a little, but I don't really understand. And that's, to me, what music is. It's like each style of music, if you want, has its own vocabulary. And you have to learn the vocabulary, and then you can kind of start to communicate in that style of music. And that's how I approach it. I try to listen to as much as, like, I mean, you know, you get a call for a Latin gig and you don't know enough Latin rhythms, you know, they start to look at you like, hey, who's the who's this guy?
Oh, no, exactly. But what you just said was exactly perfectly stated, because it really is that. Like any language, there's nothing really wrong with sometimes the different dialects. They're just different. So by having the open-mindedness to take in what makes a jazz play, you know, you hear someone like Jack DeJohnette and how he offers and how he plays is a completely different, you know, concept than someone like who might interpret jazz like Lil Jon Roberts, how he might interpret jazz, or like Brian Fraser Moore. But I know Lil Jon, I know Brian, yourself, you guys all understand jazz and you all know how to make it work. You know, now I might not be a real dedicated jazz player, but I have enough knowledge in jazz to get me through any jazz gig or big band gig and reading gig that I need. Now, there are some people that just specialize in that. Well, that's a whole nother topic of
this is a different conversation. And I was actually telling some young drummers that the other day. They were like, oh, but what do you think about this guy? Oh, what do you think about? I said, listen, after you arrive to a certain point of competency, you're competent on an instrument. It now becomes your taste of what you want to hear.
Right.
Pretty much, after a certain point, everyone's playing well. You understand? It, like, for instance, I play for Georgia, right? She can call me, but she can also call Brian. And it doesn't drop off in the level of playing. You understand? You can call Little John. It doesn't drop off. What changes is the taste. You know, do you like Gucci or Louis Vuitton? You know, do you like Mercedes or Audi? Really, is there a difference so much? It's just, you know, it's more taste things, you know. It's the spice. It's different when someone else is cooking. You know what I mean? It's just,
absolutely, man. And to me, I'm a Wrangler guy, man. Give me some Levi jeans, I'm in, man. Totally, man. This is good. We have someone that joined us here that I want to bring up here. This is from Jerome Marcus.
oh!
Hey, Mylious. Wow, it's been so long. Great to see you. We had so much fun with Kevin Higuchi back in 2012. Take good care. Jerome is a dear friend, a wonderful drummer also in the UK. Jerome, thanks so much for joining us.
Jerome, man, good to see you. I miss you. I think Gooch may be watching.
And here's a question from a wonderful drummer, man, Scott Pistol Crockett, man. I love his playing too. Another great guy. What makes a gospel drummer a gospel drummer? Is there a difference than maybe a fusion drummer?
Okay, so let's start like this.
Great question, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, it's actually a good question. A gospel drummer to me is a person who plays gospel music with the respect and reverence of what's going on in the service. Because other than that, it's just a drummer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Other than sitting in church and really internalizing what's going on in the service, this becomes gospel. You understand? When you're delivering the message through the music, that's the difference. Because honestly, I remember Thomas Pridgen when he was playing in church all the time. Now tell me, Thomas played exactly like that in church, and then he went to play for Mars Volta. What changed? The music, not Thomas.
Exactly right. Exactly.
So it's about gospel. You understand? It's about God, about the intention of what you're playing. That's the difference. I mean, because all the gospel drummers now basically are fusion drummers. Yeah. Think about it. Yeah. Honestly, when you're listening to these sheds, you're listening to some really nutty combinations and things, So in the end, it's just what they're playing. Obviously, guys who are playing fusion are writing compositions a lot different than what we're playing in church. But the drummer himself, if he's capable to play those compositions, he's a fusion drummer too.
Yeah.
It's about the music. It's about what you can do inside of the music. That's what makes you that. But if you're playing gospel, you're consecrated. You're delivering the message. That's what I was taught coming up. Is the only difference.
Great point. Great point. And well said. Thank you, Scott, for the question. That's fantastic. So now let's go now. So now you kind of start to hook up with this band. You're starting to travel. All of a sudden now your career is starting to kind of get some footing to what's happening. What was next?
So right after that, then there was a stint because Nick Lachey was dating Jessica Simpson. One thing led to the other. I got to be her musical director and put together a band for her. Then I was able to bring my friends along, my buddies Ace and Jay and Salon and these, all the homies, and we started to move as a group. And then it started to really move because we were just not the drummer. Now we come with the whole package. And then after that, I got to be the musical director for Joe, R&B singer. I'm kind of running through. In that spot, I was also doing Alex Bugnon, which is like they would call it smooth jazz, And we were just moving around, doing a bunch of stuff. We got to work with Queen Latifah, just in the mix. And then one day the phone rang and it was Pink. And that completely changed my life. Yeah. Like that was the one that just took off left and went nuts. Yeah, it got crazy after that.
and she is such a wonderful musician herself and what she does and just the actual show that she puts on. So when you get into it, so what were the rehearsals like in those early days of Pink? Because this was really the kind of the beginning of her career too. She was
before she never really had a band. We were like the first band that she had worked with, and the first rehearsals, to be honest, were if I had to tell the truth, were a bit weird because she didn't really. She was excited to have the band, and she felt the sound, but then there was a discussion of imaging with her and what was going on. And then at that time she was working with Linda Perry, and Linda had a vision and she had a vision. So the band changed several times. Like we went as a group with the homeboys, right? And then she wanted more women in the band. So my boy Ace left. I think he went to go play with Jennifer Lopez, if I remember correctly, or something like this. And then Salon left. He was doing some stuff with Nile Rodgers. So everybody had work, so we were okay with that. And it just left me and Jason from the original crew. And we became kind of the core, and they started building around. We went through musicians, and finally we found a combination after the first promotional run when we got to LA. Yeah. We did some auditions and we made some calls to friends and we found the right combination. And everybody was happy. And then after that, it was about a 8-year run before any movement in the band, we stayed solid for 8 years. Yeah.
That's a long time to crank and travel at that pace. So now you're in the mode of traveling. You're into the whole touring. This is a whole nother lifestyle.
220 shows a year. This is, it gets nutty, man.
Yeah. So it's incredible. So from there on, so then when did you make the move to Italy?
So during that whole time, toward the end of the run with Pink, we did MTV Awards in Edinburgh, and a guy named Giovanotti from here won an award in England, so he was there. And we did like a mini concert at the end of the show. One song was broadcast, and then the other two were for the pilot sport, for the arena. And he was there, and then we were at the after party. And he came up to me like, "Hey, bro, you got to come to Italy and play with me." And I'm kind of looking like, who's this guy? I had no idea who he was. we got back to LA. We traded numbers, you know. We got back to LA, and I remember mentioning to the musical director of Pink at that time, was an Italian man named Alessandro Alessandroni. Alex, he lives in LA. And he was the musical director for Christina Aguilera and Pink. And I said, hey, you're Italian. Who is this guy? And he said, oh, man, you could have so much fun. You got to go. You got to go. He's enormous. He's huge. I was like, that's crazy. I've never heard of this man. And then one thing led to another. And I came to Italy. And I was only thinking to come and do the record and do the tour and then get out of here.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with this place.
Yeah.
And I ended up taking a small apartment in Milan. And then the rest is the rest. Lorenzo, Gianni Nannini, Tiziano Ferro, Franco Battiato. And it just, you know, this ball starts to roll, you know, in a different space. Also, I saw an opportunity, Dom, if I had to be honest, to change the space. You know, in America, things started doing this. You know, for a while, Brian, myself, Little John, Chris, we were all running parallel to each other in one direction. At a certain point, the industry started changing, and we started to get the same calls for the same job.
Right.
And the one thing we learned growing up is you don't fight.
Absolutely.
You don't fight with your friend, your other musician friend. You don't devalue the gig by underbidding your friends. It's like there's little rules we learned growing up, us, that I think are getting a little bit lost now.
Yeah.
And I saw an opportunity to take myself out of that race and to just come to a different space. And that's what I did. And that's besides being completely in love with the country, it was a chance to change the space and try to do it again in a different space to see, you know, if it's possible. I told my dad I wanted to be one of the greatest drummers in the world. I didn't say I had to be the greatest drummer in the world. I said one of the greatest drummers in the world. You know, like you know, but you got to go in the world and play. That's what that statement meant to me. You got to go in an environment where nobody speaks your language and try.
Exactly right.
Yeah, and that was my actual motivation, like honest, you know.
There's something about Italy, which, listen, I of Italian background. I grew up. My grandparents on both sides were Italian, and they made the immigration move to come to America in the early 1900s. And both of my parents were born in America, and of course myself and my two older brothers and my younger sister born here. And we were given the opportunity of music. And in an Italian family, you played music every day. There was live music in the household, and every Sunday, the family would get together, the cousins and the aunts and uncles, and there'd be a big 20, 30, 50 people gathering every weekend. And we were the band that had to play and perform for them. So it kind of there's all that thing. So in Italy, there's a very strong respect for music. So that's the first.
That's the other thing. Here, it's weird in my little town here in Galatina. You know, I walk around and they call me Maestro. It's the weirdest thing.
It's not, and you are just that. You are, you know, they revere. Yeah, you know, in Europe, they really revere art. An artist is at a high level. You know, we've kind of lost the value in America. In America, if you're an artist, yeah, it's not, yeah, man, just
weird eccentric guy, you know.
Absolutely, man. But in Europe, if you're an artist and you are performing and sharing your talent and gift to the country and to the world, there's a high level of respect with that.
Level of respect, the fact that you do that and you live from that, and you know, it's different. And honestly, I feel that. In fact, I read some books, a couple of books years ago. And even reading the Miles Davis book and some other, you know, and you hear them talk about coming to Europe and how they felt when they got here, even years ago. They were writing about this, the experience when all the jazz and blues musicians would come to Europe and do a tour. A lot of them didn't come back either.
Charlie Parker moved.
Yeah.
He moved to France, and he just felt that the people in France and in Europe appreciated the music to a higher level towards that part of his life. So, you know, and even today, when you mention jazz in America, people are like, man, it's like such a shame, the disrespect. And jazz is America's greatest export.
Listen, besides McDonald's and hip hop,
yeah,
it's jazz, blues. Honestly, I did a seminar before COVID, and I told them Americans are responsible for pop culture. You know what I mean? Like, I think, you know, That's a big gift America gave to the idea of pop culture. Like
Yeah.
other countries have done it, right? England, they have Beatles, they've done it, right? But not like America. It's just a different vibe with
Absolutely.
this cultural thing of pop music, popularizing music, you know, these types of things. So
And
no,
if that's a great point, because if you go back even before the Beatles, we always think of popular music as the Beatles. Not really. Listen, Elvis was popular music.
yep.
Sinatra back in the 40s was popular
In
music.
fact, jazz was pop music. That's the weirdest thing. I remember my
Absolutely.
grandfather saying, "We used to dance to jazz. What is this stuff y'all doing now, spinning on your head? What is this?"
Absolutely right. So
Yeah.
very different world. So here you are now. You're in Italy. You're playing with all these great artists of what you're doing. You've got such a great reach. When I go to Italy, I hear your name over there. You really are laying down some great networking. So is the networking the same, like, being based in Italy as it is here in the States? Are you on Facebook and Instagram, socializing and posting stuff and doing things?
My wife says to me this: "You live here, but your brain is in America."
Yeah. Interesting.
So, but it's not that. It's basically because of technology. For what I do for a living, right? If you arrive to a certain point where people know your name, you can almost live wherever you want if you're in contact and you're easily accessible to where you have to go.
Yeah.
Once I figured that out, I said, okay, I can stay pretty much where I want. You arrive to a certain age, you want to put down some roots somewhere and, relax a little bit, not always on the move. So I figured, okay, I can do it from here. It was like a big question, like, are we staying or are we going back to the States? And I
Yeah.
said, nah, we're staying. We're going to stay. We can always go home, when I want. It's a flight. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's better just to be where we are. And yeah, I'm posting, and it's a whole another network out here. It's like a whole nother market. I was telling Brian this when he was here. We went to dinner in Rome. And I said, man, the crazy thing is if I get on a plane and go 2 hours there, it's a whole nother market with different artists in another language. Yeah. It's a really advantage being in Europe in this respect, that you can just go 2 hours to a whole nother market with another language, but the music is the same. You just need to know who's there and network. And the internet and posting has helped with this a lot. I got calls from everywhere. Wait, you're here? Oh, come up and do this. We had no idea you were so close. Like things like that. It happens when people realize where you are from posting and things. I'm a little older now, so I'm not so much on the phone. I have kids running around. They occupy most of the free time,
Yeah.
And so I've developed a way to kind of do it and stay involved and not let it overtake my life in this way. But no, posting, the internet, social media, it's all super important. Super, super important. And more important since they locked down the world.
Well, it really is a way of life now that either you accept it, and it's not just about connecting with drummers, it's connecting with bass players and guitar players.
Everybody, yeah. We did a whole album during COVID through the internet. In fact, the project that we're working on right now, I guess we'll get to it later, but we did during COVID over the internet. My studio to my friends, to the other one, just passing like tracks coming from Sunny T in Minneapolis. So like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
How fantastic. Well, let's talk about that now. Talk about the project that you're working on, because it's some great stuff, and it's basically your band, right?
Yep, finally. Finally, yeah, I've been playing for everyone else for so long, during COVID. I said, you know what? Let's do something. It's silly. I've dibbled and dabbled, the project Kid Gooch that he was talking about with Kevin Noguchi. That was the closest I've come at least to doing an album of my own.
Yeah.
And it was two drummers playing in perfect sync. We had it rocking. Yeah. I miss you, Kevin.
How fantastic. So with your own band, who's doing the writing?
We're all writing a bit. I'm a hip hop based guy, so I start from always from the sampler. I take old beats. I tried to do a project that wasn't what people think it would be as a drummer. It's not a lot of rules. It's not this. It's groove based. It's I'm trying to get all of the artists that I've worked with on the project. So I may have to do a volume 1 and a volume 2. So it's different styles. Timing is key with this because there's a lot of people all over the place. But the first few tracks we're releasing on the first EP are more hip hop based, underground, influence with jazz, some funk, some soul. You know, I would have to say, if I had to say a name, not too far off from what Chris is doing, but a bit more electronic because we're in Europe. Yep. So a little bit less of the soul music side, more to the electronic side. But yeah, trying to mix the drums with some electronics, you know, trying to keep the acoustic alive in a different way.
Yeah, man. Well, the project sounds great. I can't wait to hear what you're doing with me. That sounds really, really
Right, when we hang up, I'll send you something right away.
Oh, please do, man. Fantastic. But I want to know now, let's talk about those drums you have behind you, Mapex drums. You got some good snare drums there. Let's see what you got. Just talk about what you have and what you.
So this is one of the first drums I ever got from Mapex. It's that mahogany, the dark wood drum. It's from some years ago. I love this drum.
Yeah, beautiful drum.
Yeah, it's a beautiful drum. This one, Mr. Josh just sent me. I just came in the mail. This is the Solidus.
Beautiful.
The Solidus is a killer, man. This drum, and I play it deep. Yeah.
How deep is it? That 6.5 inch? What is that?
6.5. 14 by 6.5.
Yeah.
Now, this drum is special because I lost it in a bet to my son. This was the drum that actually Pink played on tour in the last few years when we did some things. This was actually the drum that's on the I'm Not Dead album.
Oh, is that great?
Yeah, this is the drum that was on the I'm Not Dead album.
Which Black Panther is that?
I forget the name of this one. I've had it so long. Actually, it was the first version of the Cherry Bomb.
Yeah, so that's part of the Saturn series. Yeah.
The Saturn series. Yep.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yep. And yeah, this was on the I'm Not Dead album, and the Bucks won the championship, so I had to give him a snare drum. There you go.
Well, it's fantastic, Miles. I mean, you really have put together an incredible business in the drumming community. I mean, you really have, as far as a player and now as a producer and a session player, I mean, you really have hit many areas of the industry that really is very, very powerful.
It's, actually, when I got here, I met some really great people in the business, executives, and they told me that moving forward in your life, you're getting older, you should start to look more into TV. So some years ago, I started to do a little bit of work with X Factor behind the scenes. I was director of the live band. And then after, I met some of the artists, and actually even now, the guys who won a few years ago, Soul System, we're working together now on some projects on their upcoming album. And so it's been a process. It's something I wanted to do. I didn't know if it was possible, but I tried to give it a shot. And so far, so good. Thank you. So far, so good. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're opening up different areas of musical entertainment. That is really an important part of us to realize that. Listen, the world is changing. For sure, right. Music is changing. But even as you said, during COVID, when the world has been shut down for this past year and a half or so, you were still creatively writing and producing and recording and asking friends to send in parts and mixing and editing and Pro Tools and this and that, and Logic Pro. Right. Bring it on.
Man, it's like the first few months was a bit depressing, watching everything that was going on, right, George Floyd, and then things closing, and then it was like a period that I actually turned the TV off. It was the only way I can get any music out.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, I just had to turn it off. It's just like, okay, it's bad, got it. You know what I mean? Okay, it's bad, got it. And turn it off and try to think about what could I do to make it better, even for myself psychologically, it's hard to watch that stuff, man,
Well, it really is, but that's good that you did that, because what you did is you controlled the input that was coming into you. And if we don't control what's coming into us, and if it's all negative, and listen, the world is crazy, but we're all going to get through this.
Yeah, I have faith in people. I actually still have faith in people. I believe in the goodness of people. I believe that at some point common sense does take over, and you start to go, okay, that's just nuts. You know what I mean? Like, hey, come on, man, that's nuts. And I think that happens at some point, and I think it will. That's that. And I think the rest is just due to music. Honestly, COVID helped. I hate to say it like this. Like, that closing put everybody in the house.
Yeah.
And somehow we all had to think about, okay, now what? And yeah, I don't think it's all the way a bad thing, especially in the music business. I realized that a lot of the stuff in the middle between what really has to happen and what actually does happen, there's a lot of pieces and steps in the middle that have been eliminated in the last year and a half. And it seems really easy now to get the music out. It's just a little bit easier than before.
Well, that's a great point, Mylious, and I wish people could really understand that during these crazy times, we have to adapt and change to the times and try and find. Listen, COVID delivered us lemons. Well, I made lemon cake, I made lemonade, I made lemon pie, I made lemon cookies. I kept on making stuff that had to do with lemon, but you know something? It was all great the way it was. And yes, we've lost some people, and it's been terribly sad. I've lost probably over 20 people that I know of who have passed away because of COVID.
Jeff Davis, man. We lost Jeff Davis, Jeff Lowe.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So with that, but yet in the course of that, you know, I'm teaching in my studio. I just recorded a song for Billy Cobham for a project that we're doing together. I've got this idea coming on that we got drummers performing to bring in food for hunger to feed people. So there's things that can be done that can be moved forward. And it seems like you have that kind of a positive mental attitude that is extremely important for every musician to have in trying times. Keep going, keep trying.
Keep going. Don't stop.
Yeah.
You understand? Because you are the music. So it's no, like, unless you actually stop, it never stops. You know what I mean? Like, it's the truth. Yeah, it's the truth. You can stop me from playing in the Palace Sport because you closed everything in the arena. But I can still play in my studio and still put it out.
Yeah.
So what did you stop? You just stopped us going in the arena. That's it. The music is still the music. You know what I mean? There's other ways.
The people that would go to the arena still have access to the internet to hear the music. So, but it's a great point. That's a great point and a great attitude.
Yeah, that's how I felt about it the whole time.
Otherwise, we'd be crazy at this point. Absolutely, man. We say, Madonna mia, what's going on over here?
Yeah. In the words of my daughter,
we say, ma che cosa? What's going on?
Perché?
Well, you are in an area, man, where there is some great wine, some great food. The people are wonderful and relaxed in the southern part of Italy, and all of Italy, actually. And just the weather is nice. I mean, listen.
We were just on the beach
coming
today.
Down there.
We were just on the beach today. In fact, Mark, who's watching, we called each other around 4 o'clock, and he goes, you have this thing today. Yeah, I know, man. But he said, I'm on the beach. I'll be home in about an hour, man. Don't worry.
There are some great people. Mark Bennett is a phenomenal person that is involved in working at Mapex and KHS. And he's a great guy. And it really this company has some great people. Jeff Mulvihill is great. Rick DeYoung, all these great. Joshua in Taiwan. I mean, there's some really good people that puts together a real friendly atmosphere and a real concerned family mentality of what's happening with everybody in Mapex. So it's great to have you here. And Mylious, thank you so much for your time.
Dom, I love you to death, man. I miss your face. We got to see you soon, man.
We will. Next time I'm near you, man, you're going to be hearing from me. We'll get together for sure.
I'm coming to find you.
If you ever get to New York, you make sure you give me a holler for sure.
I will. Hopefully in November. I hope it's possible to get out there in November.
That would be good. I'll be here, man, for sure. We'll do it. Thank you so much, everyone. Mylious Johnson joined us. We had people from all around the world that have listened in. All the people that have joined us, thank you so much. Mylious, stay well, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Don. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening to me babble.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tom.